Notice this is the same thing the Lord said when he came on the scene, right? It says, and to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the covenants. So the covenants and the glory of the Most High only pertains to the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, in accordance to Romans 9th chapter and the 3rd verse, right? And it says, and the glory and the covenants and the giving of the law and the service of the Most High, right? And the promises. Now let's jump to Psalms 147 and 19 just to prove that point just once more. Right, Psalms 147 and 19, he says, he showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his commandments unto Israel. Right? He showed his laws, right? His statutes, his judgment unto the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. Right? It says, he hath not dealt so with any nation, right? He hasn't dealt with anyone else on the face of the earth as he has dealt with the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. Right? And it says, and as for his judgments, they have not known them. Right? Jump back to Romans the 9th chapter. Says who are Israelites, and to whom pertaineth the adoption and the glory and the giving of the law and the service of the Most High, whose are the fathers, right, and of whom concerning the flesh Christ came, who's God over all, right? It says, not as though the word of the Most High has taken on effect, for they are not all of Israel which are of Israel. Going to speak about the elect, right, which is the first thing I touched. Right, where with the Most High is going to set he's going to select 144,000, right? Then he's going to redeem the whole number of the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans when we get into our own kingdom, right? That's why it says in Isaiah the 14th chapter, like we just seen, that all of Israel's going to make it eventually, but not to begin with, right? It says, whose are the fathers, and of whom concerning the flesh Christ came, and who is God over all. Right, the Most High be blessed forever. Amen. It says, not as though the words of the word of the Most High have taken none effect, for they are not all of Israel which are of Israel. Right? It says, what's that taking up?
Good morning.
How you doing? Likewise. It says, not as though the word of the Most High have taken none effect, for they are not all of Israel which are of all Israel. So they're going to be, like we know through Zechariah the 14th, Zechariah the 13th chapter and 8th verse. Right? The Most High said 2 parts thereof is going to be cut off and that. Right? Right? Neither shall, because they are the seed of Abraham, are they all the children. But in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Right? That is, they which are the children of the flesh, they are not the children of the Most High, but the children of the promise are counted for seed. For this word of promise, at this time I will come, and Sarah shall have a son. Right? Not only this, but when Rebekah, right, also conceived by one our father Isaac, for the children not being yet born, neither having done good or evil, right? We're just speaking about, this is going to be talking about why is Esau been selected to be the wicked, and why is Jacob, Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, been selected to be the righteous, right? It says, for the children not being yet born, right, neither having done good or evil, rather the purpose of the Most High according to election might stand not of works. So this was never about works. Right, this was all about the Most High, the will of the Most High. It says, but of him that calleth, right, it was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger, right, of which Jacob was the elder and Esau was the younger. It says, as it is written, Jacob have I loved and Esau have I hated, as we've seen in Malachi the 1st chapter and the 4th verse. Right? It says, what shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with the Most High? So is there unrighteousness with the Most High because he selected one people to be above another people? Right, he selected, let's jump to Deuteronomy the 7th chapter and the 6th verse, right? Right, it's Deuteronomy 7 and 6, it says, for thou, this is talking about the Negroes, Spanish, Native Americans, it says, for thou art a holy people unto the Most High. What does holy mean? Holy means separate, right? It says, for thou art a holy people unto the Most High, the Lord thy power, and the Lord thy power hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Right? So the Most High is already showing you there that he selected one group of people to be above all the people that are upon the face of the earth. Right? And in Romans here, the Most High is saying, is the Most High unrighteous for doing that? Alright, it says in Romans 9 and 14, what shall we say then? There is unrighteousness with the Most High? Is there unrighteousness with the Most High for him selecting one group of people to be above another group of people, where if that group of people is going to put into captivity? It says, God forbid, for he saith to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I'll have compassion on whom I will have compassion. Right? Let's jump to Jeremiah 51. Right, it's Jeremiah the 51st chapter. Right, it's Jeremiah 51, from on top on down. It says, thus saith the Lord, right? Behold, I'll raise up against Babylon, right? As we've seen, we know who Babylon is, that land of confusion. Right, I'll raise up against Babylon, right? And them that dwell in the midst of them, right? And I'll rise up against him with a destroying wind. What's that destroying wind? It's gonna be those ICBMs. It's gonna be those those chariots, the so-called UFOs. Right? It says, I'll raise up against and I'll raise up against them in the midst of them that rise up against me and raise up against me a destroying wind. It says, and I will send unto Babylon fanners, and they shall fan her, and shall empty the land, her land, and shall empty her land. And for in the day of trouble shall they be against her round about. Who's that talking about? Talking about the heathen. The heathen's gonna be round about, you know, that particular land, man. When that destruction comes. All right. It says, and against him that bendeth, against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow, and against him that lifteth himself up in the brigandine, and spare ye not the young men, destroy ye utterly all of our hosts. Thus saith the slain, it says, thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, right? And they shall thrust through in her streets. For Israel shall not be forsaken. So the Most High is not going to forsake the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, and not redeeming, you know, not avenging, so to speak. Like it says in Galatians 6:6, be not deceived. The Most High is not mocked. Right? Whatsoever man soweth, that's also is he going to reap. Where with the Most High set it up, the wicked, the wicked have sown a captivity, death, and destruction, and that's what they're going to reap. Right, which is the same thing as saying here, with the Most High, for Israel shall have not been forsaken, nor Judah of his power, right, of the Lord of hosts, right. Though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One, flee ye out of the midst of Babylon, like it says in Micah 2:10, right, because it's going to destroy it, right. It says, flee ye out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. And how are people gonna be cut off in her iniquity? For those ICBMs, for those that nuclear destruction. Alright? It says, flee out of the midst of Babylon, right, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. The Most High deals with vengeance, man. Just as he deals with redemption, just how he deals with peace, and just as much as he deals with destruction. Right? It says, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance, and he will render unto her a recompense. Right? Babylon have had a golden cup in the Lord's hands, and has made all the earth drunken, and the nations have drunken off of wine. What's that wine representative of? Is representative of those philosophies. Right? Let's jump to Revelations, the 18th chapter, real quick, and we see the similarities. Right? Right? Going to show you that this wasn't, you know, the Most High deals with reincarnation. This wasn't only talking about the original Babylon, it's also talking about the Babylon that was to come. Right? Which is, the spearheaded by America, and which is America. Right? The land of confusion. Right? It's Revelations 18, from the first verse on down. It says, and after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lit in its glory. Right? And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen. This is the Revelations, remember, last book in the Bible. Right? And John saw this vision way after the original Babylon was destroyed. So this was talking about another land. And we're going to see the similarities, and you're going to show you that it's the same place. Right? It says, and cried mightily with a strong voice. Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all the nations have drank the wine of the wrath of fornication. Same thing he was talking about in Jeremiah the 51st chapter. Namely, that wine is those philosophies. The philosophies are against the scriptures, the law, statutes, commandments of the Most High. Right? It says, for all the nations have drank all the wine of the wrath of fornication, which is why it says in Amos 9th chapter in the 8th verse, right? They're gonna be destroyed for all the wickedness that they do, man. Right? It says, for all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of earth have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. Now I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. Same thing it was saying in Jeremiah the 51st chapter. Come out of Babylon, unless you be destroyed, lest you be destroyed by the way Babylon's going to be destroyed, lest you be destroyed by these ICBMs that these Iranians have set up. Right? But the Russians have arsenal. Right? It says, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sin, and you receive of her plagues. Right? For her sins have reached unto heaven, and the Most High hath remembered her iniquity. Reward her even as she rewarded you, double unto her according to her works, and the cup which she hath fulfilled. Right? And that goes to show you that the Most High works with a cycle of vengeance. And pretty much with that, we're going to sign out and say double honors to the elders.